Hi everyone, this is Ellen Watson, Educational Developer with the University of Alberta Centre for Teaching and Learning, and I'm here to talk to you today about how I create rubrics for my assignments. On one side of your screen, you'll see an assignment description for a reflection that I've assigned in my educational technology courses that I've taught in the Faculty of Education in Edmonton. And in this assignment, I'm asking students to write a short reflection based on the Alberta Education, Learning and Technology Policy Framework and how they might connect that to teaching in the classroom. If you'd like to read the assignment, I would encourage you to pause the recording at this time and take a minute to read. So in summary, I'm looking for students to write 500 words or 4 minutes or less. So I do give students the option to write a short reflection or to complete a video or audio reflection. I ask them to provide 2 outcomes and rationale or justification for why they've included these outcomes. And their rationale or justification should reference course readings and may also include other materials provided and discussions we have had to support your inclusions. I've also included our 2 learning outcomes because I find assessments easier to write when I know what the learning outcomes are that I'm trying to get students to achieve. So here are learning outcomes to be assessed are students should be able to speak to and integrate Alberta Education's Learning and Technology Policy Framework into their future courses. They should also critique, discuss, and debate the uses of informational communication technology in the classroom, discussing the implications of technology in the classroom on the development of 21st century learners. So on the other side of your screen here, I have a single point rubric set up for us to begin this process. In the single point rubric, instructors put their criterion and descriptions that are going to be graded in the center of the rubric, and typically these meet a B range score. So a good score. What would students need to complete to achieve a good score on their assignment? Then instructors can write comments to the right or to the left of that main column to indicate areas that students exceed expectations on that criterion and areas that students need to improve in order to meet that criterion. In the end, the instructor can assign a grade based on whether the student is consistently exceeding or needing to improve to meet these expectations. To start here, I'm going to need to come up with some criteria. What criteria am I going to grade this assignment on? Well, I always like to go to my learning outcomes to see what I'm going to grade on. I'm asking students to write 2 learning outcomes and to speak to how they're going to integrate Alberta's Learning and Technology Framework into their future courses. So one of my criteria is going to be whether or not students can provide sound outcomes that should be added. So I'm going to write my criterion will be outcomes are sound. Another outcome that I'm going to want is I'm going to want to look at the rationale that students provide. So the rationale for outcomes. Looking at our other outcome, what I'm asking students to do is to critique, discuss, and debate the use of information communication technology. So in this criterion, because I'm asking them to critique, discuss, and debate, and they're arguing and providing me a justification, I'm going to call this criterion argument, because I want to see if they can argue their justification properly. Finally, I do like to include a criterion about whether or not they've met the requirements of the assignments. However, this is completely up to you. I usually include it and I make it worth less. The rest, I just find that students tend to pay attention a bit more to what is expected if I include that. So I'm going to call requirements of assignment. That's the easiest one, so let's start with there. Now, what would be a description of a good achievement of the requirements of assignments? Well, I would expect that the word count or time expectation is met. I would also expect that the question has been addressed. The question or task has been addressed as described. And because a lot of instructors like to include it, if you're going to include a piece on grammar or spelling, this is where I would suggest including it. So there are no or very few grammar, or spelling. To indicate that this is worth less, I'm probably going to say something like this is worth 0.5 weighting of other criteria, so that students know when I'm making my decision, what would that be worth? Okay, let's talk about sound outcomes. So I've asked for students to provide outcomes to promote the development of 21st century teachers. So what I would be looking for at a good level, a B level, is that students provide outcomes that, contribute to the definition, that they promote the 21st century students, they contribute to this definition. Outcomes provided contribute to definition of a digitally confident teacher. This also connects to what outcomes should be added for digitally confident teachers. I'm saying, what else can we do here? Thinking about the outcomes, you could also include comments in here around the phrasing. You could also include comments in here around whether or not the outcomes further our understanding or if they are replicating what's already there. But let's move on to rationale just for time's sake. So looking at our rationale for outcomes, I want students to provide a rationale or justification that references course readings, as well as gives me a clear indication of why those outcomes are sound. So a good assignment will provide me that. A rationale speaks to why these aspects, these outcomes are needed in the Learning and Technology Policy Framework. And I also ask that they use readings. So rationale uses readings and discussion for support. Finally, let's talk about argument. If we're looking at an argument here, I'm looking at how well have students argued that this can contribute to 21st century learners. Have they critiqued, discussed, and debated the use of the ICT? So here, a phrasing I might choose is the rationale addresses how, it discusses, rationale discusses how outcomes contribute to the development of 21st century learners. And I'm also looking that students have argument and justification is sound and, for lack of a better word, rational. Now, students may go beyond this, right? Students might not only discuss, but they might argue for these to contribute and further the development. And so there, in my exceeding column, I would write a comment about, argument is exceeding expectations by blah, blah, blah. And I would include my comments there. So this is how I might create a single point rubric based on an assignment. In my next video, I'll be talking about how to create the analytic rubric based on your assignment.